UFC St. Louis is in the books. Derek Lewis with another knockout under his belt. We are live. Fight Bananas post-fight show here with you. We got Blake and myself. First of all, Blake, my man, how you doing?
My man, Jonathan Ramalakan. I am fantastic, dude. I am steaming with energy right now because this fight card, I mean, it was a fight night. Okay, whatever. That doesn't usually get a whole bunch of hype. This card was awesome, man. I was juiced. There was, especially on the main card, there was great undercards as well. But on the main card, man, there was so many fights that just had me jacked. I was jacked to the tits, man.
Absolutely, man. A lot of knockouts, some fast ones. Olberg, 12 seconds getting
Yeah.
his knockout, right? We saw Derek Lewis get his knockout. Crazy upset by Diego Ferreira. Like, the night was just amazing. Overall, I think, like you said, just from top to bottom, UFC tends to stack the fight nights that are live a little bit more, right? Because obviously they're not in the apex. And that's why we as fans want to see them get away from the apex because you heard the crowd, you heard the chants of Buckley, you heard the chants of USA, right? You heard all the different chants of Lewis, everything. That's what kept it fighting. Sean Sterling in the comments, as he always is, the main man. Definitely a solid card. Wish he caught it from the start, but missed a couple early fights. Yeah, I mean, obviously with some of those early fights, they were good, but with the main card, like I think it was one of those nights where it let up really well. So let's start off right at the top. Derek Lewis, like we said, another knockout. And after the knockout, like Doug Rollins said, the 15th of his UFC career, he tends to do something that's a little unique. Derek Lewis is that guy where after the fight is over, you know that the show isn't over just yet, that there's still more to be there. And, he did that first by taking his cup, throwing it towards Media Row. Shout out to the guy who caught that. And then from there, he actually went and mooned the St. Louis crowd. So he flashed his ass to the audience. Camera did not catch that, unfortunately, which would have been hilarious. But we did see Derek
I
Lewis
caught it.
mooning the crowd. So, Blake, first off, the performance, right? He was able to get out
Yes.
there, something I wasn't expecting. He got a takedown on Nascimento, and he was much more willing to engage in the clinch than I would like him to, but his coaches kind of snapped him out of that. And in the third round, he's able to get the knockout. Reactions on the win and the post-fight shenanigans by Derek Lewis.
First off, Derek Lewis, fan favorite. I mean, the guy will give you everything you want in a post-fight interview and then some. And that's what we got tonight. We got the cup throw. We got the shorts throw because, boys' balls was hot. And then we got something that we don't usually get. He mooned the entire crowd in St. Louis, baby. St. Louis is only 4 hours from me. I could have been there seeing Derek Lewis's asshole live. And not that that's something that I would have done, but it would have just been a joy to see. But yes, Derek Lewis tonight versus Nascimento. I think I was a little worried because Derek Lewis, as we know, has done one of two things. He either has trouble on the ground or proves jiu-jitsu doesn't exist when he's able to just stand up electrifyingly from the ground sometimes because he has such brute strength. But tonight, Derek Lewis said in the pre-press conferences, and I believe he said it to Michael Bisping and Laura Sanko and them before the fight, maybe not even on camera, but he said, I'm going to get a takedown tonight. And you saw him attempt it the very first round. Like when Derek Lewis says he's going to do something, he does it or at least attempts to do it. Like this is not a man that you should take lightly. And yes, Sean, I agree. It is hard trying to bet against Derek Lewis. He's a fan favorite. Your heart's always with him. So when you're betting with your heart, a lot of times you lose. But two, he's also proven that he's one of the most notorious knockout artists in the entire history of the UFC. Okay, 15 career knockouts. That's insane. I believe he has the second most knockouts of all time, or is he still the leader of knockouts?
Yeah, he's the leader. He's the
He's
leader
the
of
leader.
knockouts.
He's the
Finishes,
leader.
there's still a couple guys ahead of him, but when it comes to pure knockouts, he's that dude.
Yes, pure knockouts, he is the leader, and that's what makes him such a fan favorite. Then he just brings all the jazz and juice and WWE-ness that you'd want on the microphone afterwards, because he's going to tell you exactly. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't say, I'm going to go home and throw my wife's legs up in the air. You know what I mean? Like, the man is always spectacular to watch, and today we got to see a little bit of full moon from Derek Lewis and the Black Beast. So, man, when it comes to the fight itself, I actually thought he brought it to Nascimento. Like, Nascimento thought he was going to get in there, take Derek Lewis down, and just hold him down. Derek Lewis tried to take him down and did successfully take him down. And that's not something you usually see in Derek Lewis's game. And I thought he did really good, especially in the clinch. I agree with you. He did do the clinch a little too much sometimes when it was not in his favor. And maybe that's, like you said, and especially in that third round when his coaches were like, yo, knock that shit off. We're done with that. I get it that you wanted to do that and you have a mind of your own, but we can't just be doing that the entire time. We have to get back to the bread and butter, which is knocking motherfuckers out. And that's exactly what he did. In the third round, he really snapped out of it. Was it third round?
Yes.
Yes, third round. He snapped out of it, and he was like, all right, let's go back to the bread and butter. These fucking hands, baby. And Derek Lewis, I will tell you, looked the best I've seen him look. His takedown defense looked fantastic. Yes, Nascimento got on top of him, I believe, in the second round a little bit more than he would have liked to. But other than that, Derek Lewis looked 39 years old, out there doing that thing. He looked fantastic. This is the best I've seen Derek Lewis look probably in the last 5 fights.
Absolutely. I think he's just he's like they said in the comments, they who was it? It was Doug Rolland, right? He says tends to give him 5-round fights against grapplers. Let this man bang, right?
Yes,
And
sir.
he did ask who's next for Derek Lewis. Volkov. I like Tai Tuivasa. You know what I mean? I think with Tai kind of falling down the rankings and you wanting that set up, that would be a good one. So a couple more of the comments. This is a hilarious one. He would have had his phone out to take a picture if Derek Lewis would have flashed him. So I think that would have been a picture you could probably frame and sell on eBay for a good amount of money. And like you said, Doug, I think the most funny thing, because me and my girl was actually watching this fight together, I was telling her that he does this thing where he just does like a just fucking stand up, right? It doesn't matter what is on him, what type of takedown is being tried up against them. I think that that's part of the hilarious thing. And I think that's the good question actually to lead into is what's next for Derek Lewis, because looking at some of the potential matchups, I think Tai Tuivasa is just a very fun matchup. I think it's going to be hard for the fans to decide who they want to win that one, right? But Jairzinho, that's another good one too. But you also run the risk of having that Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou fight where both guys were scared to throw, right? But
Yeah.
I think that's a good one too, because Jairzinho is always willing to engage, right? Tai versus Lewis in Australia, that's a good one. Rabi saying 2 great fighters. Yeah, tonight was 2 great fighters. Nascimento, I want to give him a little bit of credit too, because even though he took some really clean shots from Derek Lewis, he never really went out cold. Right, he was still able to maintain, and it wasn't a clean knockout. Right, it was a knockdown that led to the eventual TKO. But definitely give some credit to Nascimento for actually not just being completely flatlined by Derek Lewis, but there's a dream matchup: Alex Pereira versus Derek Lewis is in the comments. I think Tai Tuivasa. There's some options there for you as well. So when it comes to the next matchup, who do you think would be the most fun one to see, and what do you think is the most realistic one?
If you're talking draws, well, first of all, let me go back because you addressed quite a few different things there. I want to go back to just Derek Lewis being able to stand up. Like when you're a casual watching these fights, I've heard it so many times. You're like, oh, dude, just stand up. Oh, just fucking stand up. Like, oh, that's just so easy against world-class grapplers. Except Derek Lewis is the only person that you can say that in a fight, and it might actually happen. He might just stand the fuck up. Jiu-jitsu? What the fuck is that? Boom. Get off me. I'll stood up. So that I always think is hilarious. But if you're really talking about what I think the UFC should do is you're talking about 2 fan favorites, okay? You're talking about Derek Lewis and Tai Tuivasa. I love both of these guys. They have such huge draws. Anywhere Derek Lewis goes, he's bringing not only fans with him in the audience, but he's also bringing fans with him from pay-per-views. Anytime Derek Lewis fights, people are going to buy that fight. Also, guess what? Same thing with Tai Tuivasa. Bam Bam himself. I love watching him. I will pay for anything that he does because I don't pay for that. Anyway, I love
no Diddy, no Drake.
Just kidding. No. But I love watching these guys fight. So I think if you wanted a huge pay-per-view draw, put these dudes in the main card, Bam Bam, Tai Tuivasa, and Derek Lewis. For a fact that is going to be a huge draw, not only pay-per-view wise, but just fans in general. Blake over Rogan by Dave Van Auken. I wish I was in that man's shoes, my man. But Dave, I appreciate you, good sir.
We got the GOAT in the comments, Mr. Dave Van Auken. First off, shout out for the guy for giving us the platform.
Yes, sir.
Sean Sterling talking about actually a topic we talked about last week, which is the gatekeeper topic. But Derek Lewis, he is, that gatekeeper. But I think at this point of his career, he's already attempted at the top. He's had a shot against DC.
Mhm.
He was up there in the rankings, and he fell down now. And at this later part of his career, like Blake said, I think his best suit is for him to be a draw, right, and him to be maybe, something like tonight where you have him in a fight night pay-per-view because he's going to sell tickets, right? How many people there were super excited for Derek Lewis? Because, of course, you had the hometown guy in the co-main event
Mhm.
in Joaquin Buckley, right? But Derek Lewis still got such an exciting reaction, even though he wasn't a hometown guy. So Doug Rollins saying if anyone can beat his KO record, potentially, right? I say never when it comes to that because it's very interesting. But um, yeah, that's true. Like you'd have to knock out every opponent for 5 years or have the longevity, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this is something where you can see like maybe an Alex Pereira, like maintain fight at light heavyweight for a couple years, then he moves up to heavyweight and he's still knocking out guys. Maybe Pereira might do that. Oh, and we might have from Dave Van Auken, we got some breaking news. We might have a bonus podcast on Monday. Keep it locked in right here on Fight Bananas. We might have our biggest guest of all time. We just had Dustin Poirier. So who might that be? I don't even know. I wish I had some inside scoop for you. I know I don't know,
It's
but
Derek Lewis.
it might be Derek Lewis, right? But we got some names in the comments. Maybe I don't know, right? But
Maybe?
that would be amazing. But final thoughts. Any final thoughts before we move on to this co-main event on Derek Lewis and kind of just everything surrounding just this legend of Derek Lewis? Because I want to give him a little bit of love because he is coming to the latter part of his career. I don't know how many fights more that we are going to see him, but every fight that we do get to see him and every fight that he wins by knockout like tonight, it's just one that you do want to cherish because it's a special moment from a fighter that I think as all fight fans, we kind of bring close to our heart because of, not just inside the cage, but outside the cage. You don't remember what they do. They remember how you make you feel, right? So Derek Lewis always makes people feel like happy, laugh, no matter what. Even if he loses, right? He's going to make you laugh in some sort of way. But any final thoughts on Derek Lewis before we move on to this co-main event?
Yeah, well, first things first, I agree with Dave Van Auken in the comments. The blurry background on Jonathan, I will take every day over Taco Bell. So that over free Taco Bell, actually. So I 100% agree with that. Second off, when it comes to Derek Lewis, he's one of those guys that he's become such a fan favorite because not only does he do the antics that you want, but he delivers. And this is the best that we've seen Derek look. Like I said, in the last 5 fights, like this is the best. And he even told the commentating cast beforehand that he feels like he's in his prime. At 39, that's insane to hear. And he even said he has to sit his black ass down and take a rest for a minute. But that's okay because I thought the way he looked today was the best I've seen him in the last 2 years. So if he can continue, he had 2 surgeries. He had stem cell surgery on both of his shoulders. He said he fought the last fight with two torn shoulders, which is insane. I mean, that's obviously going to come with age and wear and tear and whatnot. But he looked phenomenal tonight. Like I really liked what I saw from Derek Lewis. I mean, this is not what we saw versus Altameda.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the same Derek Lewis. Like this was a guy who was out there determined, trying new things, but also staying close to his roots. I would love to see him fight 2, 3, 4 more fights. I was a little worried when I saw his pants off, his cup out, and his gloves off.
I did. I was
This
too.
might be the day that he got the knockout and he steps off the UFC stage. And luckily it was not. He said, I am in my prime, but I need to go take a rest. So maybe we don't see him fight quite as much anymore. Maybe once a year, twice a year. It just depends. I mean, like there's a great chance we're going to see him again before the end of the year. And I really hope we do. But yeah, I was a little worried there for a second. But Derek Lewis, absolute superstar. You get your flowers, good sir. Fantastic job.
Absolutely. Doug Rollins saying Derek Lewis is a superstar for sure.
Yes, sir.
Dave saying, say stem cell surgery 3 times fast. Stem cell surgery, stem cell surgery, stem cell surgery. Bang, we got it right here. Great call outs all tonight. Buckley versus Connell is a doubtful call out, right? But I do still think that's a good one. So actually, fun one. I do think this is a good topic because this was probably one of the best fights of the prelims because I know, Blake, we were both watching this one. So before we move on to this quick topic, right? Trey Waters, right? I do think as we have someone amazing joining us in the lobby here. But Blake, give us your thoughts. Did you get to see the Trey Waters fight in the prelims? That absolute banger where both guys were just slugging it out all the way till the end.
So I wish I could sit here and make up some bullshit about Trey Waters. Unfortunately, I did not see it. I was in the car driving. I was trying to get my phone going, and I was having some connectivity issues. So I did not see Trey Waters. So I'm going to have to refer to you, my man.
Yeah, I mean, he just looked good tonight, right? Like you said, he's Doug put it in the comment. He is tall. His opponent was a lot shorter than him, right? So he did a lot of a better job much earlier in the fight when he was able to land that. He definitely cleared the scorecards. But something that you're gonna want to see a little bit of improvement is that just standing up so tall, right? His opponent was able to kind of land some shots. Both guys were tired towards the end of the third round, but his opponent was able to land some shots. I think he has all the makings as far as just a raw athletic talent. But I think this, of course, just with any young talent, just to clean it up. But as we kind of move on to this co-main event between Joaquin Buckley uh, and Nursultan Ruzabayev, I want to bring my main man Brian joining us.
Hey!
Two questions for you, Brian. I'll let you just give your quick thoughts on the main event with Derek Lewis, and then also just your thoughts on the hometown guy. Joaquin Buckley getting the dub in St. Louis. First two rounds were a little bit slow, but he picked it up in the third and was able to get the win.
Yeah, no, I thought Joaquin Buckley looked great. One judge had it 29, 27.
Correct. Probably a 10-8 third round, and one round went to his opponent. So that's how that 29-27 occurs.
Okay. No, he looked great. It's so weird seeing Joaquin is 5'8", his opponent 6'5", I think, maybe taller. Joaquin Buckley posted that one picture on Twitter where he just brought in a bunch, like every tall guy he could find in St. Louis to his gym. So, shout out to him. I'm not quite sure where he goes next from here, but Joaquin Buckley, he beat Vicente Luque his last time out, so you're kind of hoping for, what's he ranked? 11. So he's probably not finding a top 5 guy next, but maybe you look at, say,
I like a Sean Brady as potentially the next matchup, right? Someone that's a
Sean
little
Brady.
bit above him. You have Sean Brady is a good one.
Gilbert Burns, maybe.
Gilbert Burns, yeah, because he just took the L to Jack Della Maddalena. Gilbert Burns is actually a really good test at 170. I actually like that matchup a lot. Blake, what do you think about Gilbert Burns versus Joaquin?
Say that again.
Gilbert Burns versus Joaquin. Brian brought up the idea of that being his potential matchup. What's your thoughts on that as Joaquin tries to move up the rankings, defending his 11th rank?
I think that those two guys, whatever city they fight in, would be the two most muscular guys to ever exist in that city at the same time. That's what I think. Those two dudes are jacked. Joaquin Buckley is absolutely explosive. His movements and how he's progressed in his maturity in the MMA octagon is great, because originally I thought he was a little immature. He was spouting off at people that I don't think he should have been. And he was calling people out that I was just like, I don't think you're ready for that. But the more he has gone on to progress and the more fights that he has put together, the more wins that he's put together, he's showing that he's the real deal. Like, he really is I think he has moved out of, hey, this could be a great prospect, and he's moved into, yo, you're a solidified fighter. Now, how far is your hill? How high can you get on Mount Everest of these guys right now? And it looks as if he's got all of the potential in the world to put it to some of these guys within the top 10. I mean, you got Jeff Neal. I think him and Jeff Neal will be a good fight. Him and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson would be a good fight. Sean Brady, him jumping all the way up to Gilbert Burns. I think that would be good. I think Gilbert Burns would be probably the highest I would give him, because I think Gilbert has those veteran tricks that maybe he's not quite savvy to yet. So that would be the cap of that. But if he could go out there and starch Gilbert Burns and get a dub over him, the sky's the limit. Or as Michael Jordan, once famously said, the roof is the ceiling. Okay. So,
I agree with you. I'm going to cut you off real quick, my man, Blake, because I do want to bring in another member. I know Brian knows what it is, but Malachi, a member of the Can Gang, if you know what I mean. But Malachi joining us live from
Malachi!
Hey, what's up?
A interview with Joaquin Buckley, if that is correct. So, just some takeaways. I know you were live at the event. Just the experience there, the building. with having some of those hometown crowds, the energy there tonight, and then some of your interviews. Take away from just kind of some of the experiences you had post fight and during those.
Buckley is definitely the hometown hero out here. I told him I attended so many UFC live events in the past 3 years, and this was like the loudest I heard a crowd cheer for takedowns. Like loudest, like they was loud throughout his entire fight, and I have never heard a crowd as loud. Maybe if I see Connor this year, it may be louder, but right now, Buckley was the loudest. He was the loudest guy. He had the loudest reaction, and talking to him, I could tell he was surprised by how loud the crowd was at every takedown, knockdown, every strike he threw. From the time he walked out to the time he got his hands raised, it was loudest. The overall event itself, the crowd was into it, man. This was like one of the funnest crowds I seen in a minute on a fight night, at least. Like UFC 100, the crowd was into it, but on a fight night, just on the first fight, Veronica Hardy said, because I talked to her, Veronica Hardy said, like, it was a lot of people out in the arena from the first fight of the prelim. So like the St. Louis crowd, you could tell they wanted the UFC to come to their town, and they wanted to have this experience.
No, and I think they delivered on it tonight. Like you said, the energy from even early in the night, right? When you had Sean Woodson on the cards, right? You were able to see all these guys show out because Sean Woodson has the city tattooed on his stomach, right? So the city came and they showed out for him. And you mentioned that you did get an interview with Joaquin Buckley. What were some of the things that he said about maybe his performance and what he wants next? Just some of those takeaways that you were able to get up from that.
Everything was expected. I think how do you pronounce the opponent's name?
Nursultan Rizbayev.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't pronounce their names. All right, I'm sorry. I'm in MMA and I can't pronounce nobody's name, so who cares? Buckley said, and I also mentioned it to him and agree with him. One of the key factors into going into this fight for Buckley was that Nursultan thought he was going to stand up with him. He thought it was going to be a striking battle with Buckley, and he was caught off guard by Buckley takedown. And 2 years ago, I spoken to Buckley about evolving his skill set, because 2 years ago, Buckley again was a striker, and Buckley told me that like down the road he wants to evolve to be a more grappler, more wrestler based. Want to take less risk, and seeing that come to fruition, this is which we talked about. This is what he wanted. He wanted to show the evolution of his game and his style set, and show people and the division where he is at now. Like he wanted to basically send a message like, I am an evolved fighter. I am different from what have I been in the past couple of fights. Like you've seen a new version of me, and that's pretty much what we talked about in our interview. Just seeing a new him, and possibly the best version tonight. Getting more of that and more of his fights.
Absolutely. I think the most well-rounded version of Joaquin Buckley, that's what we saw tonight, right? The most complete MMA fighter version of Joaquin Buckley is what we found is what we saw tonight. So, Sean Sterling, you're saying no, he doesn't see him as a true contender. Like you said, if he beats some of those guys, I do believe you. I still have a little bit of a ceiling on him. I do think with how far he can go in his skill set, there's some tough matchups with how wrestling heavy some of those upper echelon of the guys are. Buckley versus Chandler, that would be maybe a fun one to see. I mean, that's going to be a striking battle. Chandler would probably go down eventually. We don't know who that one's going. We're going to get Chandler versus Connor, though, soon. We got Islam versus Dustin Poirier soon. But, man, we got some beautiful fights. But I want to get to the next fight of the night because it only lasted 12 seconds. We'll spend much longer talking about the fight than the fight actually lasted. Brian, I'll kick it to you over on this one. Carlos Erlberg versus Alonzo Menifield, where Alonzo had the strategy to bull rush him, miss, end up face planting against the cage, turning around, getting caught by Erlberg, left hook, and that was it. So thoughts on that fight? What was the strategy there for what was his name, for Alonzo Menifield? And just what was your thoughts going through your head during that 12-second knockout?
Yeah, the first thing I want to say is guys at this level are too good to bull rush in. Ulberg especially, he trained in the city kickboxing. Obviously, he has a lot of great guys on his team. A great head coach in Eugene Berman. That's just not what you do at this level. But Ulberg looked fantastic. Obviously, I mean, anytime you knock a guy out in 12 seconds, you can't say anything less. Again, I don't know what there is much to take away in terms of skill set, just because the fight was so short. But I will say that Ulberg, the sky's the limit. That is a guy who I think can make a very, very deep run in that division. And again, he's a guy where you're kind of looking at the top 10. You're saying like, okay, what's a good matchup there? A guy that I was kind of thinking of was Walker. That would be a massive step up in competition, but I would love to see it. I don't know if you put him in there with like a Jamal Hill. I think Jamal Hill has a fight with Roundtree coming up, but I don't know if you put him in there with the top 5 guys yet. But I mean, anybody else, like he's right there. So great performance. Hopefully, his next fight we get to see have more to break down. But from Menifield's perspective, maybe you don't do that against, light heavyweights, or it's just not what you do, but
Yeah, it just, like you said, the strategy there was there. Sean Sterling says he likes Ulberg versus Walker. That's a solid matchup. Everyone in the comments, both Sean and Doug, they're saying Ulberg is legit, and I do think he is legit. You know what I mean? I think he was able to go through that early learning curve with the loss that he took. And then from that, he was able to kind of sharpen up the edges. Like you said, Brian, training over there under City Kickboxing and Eugene Behrman, the type of training that he's going to get is one to mold him into that championship type fighter. And, at 205, of course, Alex Pereira is the king right now, but it's very wide open. And how poetic would it be for Ulberg, if you can imagine this, Ulberg going up the rankings and being the one to take out Alex Pereira, be it with a left hook of his own, because he's got a pretty nice one himself. Obviously, that revenge arc, we don't know if it's going to be happen. I do think Alex is the better fighter overall, but I do think that would be an exciting kind of revenge arc for Carlos Ulberg to go and get that win against him, just to kind of, stamp that City Kickboxing over Alex Pereira. But Blake, thoughts on the knockout for Ulberg, and do you think he is legit? Do you think he will see him rise through the rankings within the next 2-3 years?
I definitely think you will. I mean, his left hook is one that they talked about on the pre-fight kind of breakdown commentary for the fight, and Doug took the words right out of my mouth. I think if you're gonna really test Ulberg and just be like, hey, he's good, he's climbing up the rankings, give him Anthony Smith, because to me, Anthony Smith is one of those gatekeepers right now for the light heavyweight division. It was like, hey, if you can beat him, you're solidified top 10. Like, you are definitely worth your weight. Now, people have, there's a spectrum of opinions people have about Anthony Smith. Is he good? Is he great? Is he just okay? Like, and I'll let them duke that out in the comment section, because I'm not going to be the one to do it. I think Anthony Smith is one of those guys that is a solidified gatekeeper. But if it's not going to be Anthony Smith, you know who I would like to see him fight? I think Johnny Walker would be an awesome matchup, of course, but I would like to see him fight Khalil Roundtree. I think that would be an interesting matchup, because, again, if you can't get to Khalil,
he does have a fight book, though, I believe, against.
No, I get it. I'm just talking speculative, like, hypotheticals right now. That's all the fucking shit that we do, is all hypotheticals and speculatives. And I know we try to gauge it, but I would like to see a Khalil Roundtree fight. I would love to see an Anthony Smith fight. Anthony Smith does not have something coming up. I know he just fought, I believe, last week or 2 weeks ago. So I like that one a little bit more than the Johnny Walker fight. Johnny Walker is just an interesting fight in general because, one, Johnny Walker's style is something to be awed about. I mean, he's always going to bring something out that you've never seen before. Hell, he might even tear his labrum in doing the worm after a fight, but you never know. So, but yeah, so I could see Anthony Smith, Johnny Walker, Khalil Roundtree. Those are my 3 guys that I think Ulberg would be a great test against. But I think the guy's good. And then going back to Menifield, Terrible game plan. I don't know what that was. I don't agree with it. Had you stood on your feet, that'd have been fine. But I hated it. I'm not. There's no way I can make any like good points about it. I just did not like his game plan coming into this fight. I thought he probably would have been the one to collect the dub tonight, but the game plan was just atrocious.
Absolutely atrocious. But I'll give Malachi a second before we get back to him. But on that, I think it just overall, Carlos Ulberg is one of those guys that if he continues to develop the talent that he's been working with, he could, end up being at the top of there. But the next fight to me was
Malachi's giving us a tour of the arena right now.
right. We're getting that UFC St. Louis backstage treatment, and I want him to we're going to talk about it. And in my opinion, was the most exciting, one of the most exciting fights of the night because Diego Ferreira, as such an underdog, to go out there and pick up the win against Mateusz Rebecki. Got dropped twice in the first round and came back, weathered the storm, and was able to get the win. Malachi, were you out there live in the audience? Because I know you were live there for the Ulberg knockout, right? But were you also live to see Diego Ferreira? Okay, so overall, just thoughts on the Ferreira comeback, on just his ability to do that, a minus or plus 400 underdog going into this fight.
I'm gonna be honest, I can't give you my opinion on Diego. I was super busy during that fight. That was one of those fights I was like busy editing and was able to see the fight. All I caught was maybe like the final couple of minutes, seconds, where Rebecca's eyes was like shot. Yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah, Rebecca had one round of cardio and then showed after that was it. So, Brian, was that a fight that you were able to catch?
Yeah, Fiera, his chin, insane. It's like, for me, it started off as one of those fights where I'm like, okay, Rebecca's gonna, knock him out in the first round. Fiera was taking some big shots. But the game plan worked. You just kind of let the guy blow his load. After that, he's like, he just got him out of it, So it worked. Fiera, that's a hell of a comeback performance. After again Rebecca slowed down in the second, you could see it visibly. He wasn't seeing much after that second either. Both of his eyes seemed, were essentially shut. He got the TKO. Fiera did, right? They didn't go to a decision.
Yeah, he got the
TKO.
Yeah.
10 seconds left. 9 seconds left.
Right. So, yeah, again, but that's just an experience thing, right? It's kind of like we talk about how these guys are just too good, and if you can't put a guy down in the first round and you're exhausted, what do you do? And it was kind of just that. It's you see Rebecca throwing bombs, throwing heat, and to his credit, he dropped Fiera a couple times, but once the guy can endure, then you're just kind of getting picked apart and you don't really have any answer. So I think this is a learning experience for Rebecca. I think he's going to come back and be like, okay, let me work on my cardio. Let me work on kind of slowing the pace of the fight, knowing that like, hey, I don't always have to come and just throw heat and try to knock a guy out. Like I can pick my spots like Rebecca or like Fiera did. I know it's tough when you lose to a 39-year-old guy, a guy you're supposed to win. You're 19-1 or I guess 19-2 now, and you're like, shit, like, what does that say about me? I should be in my prime. I should be killing these guys and making my way up the lightweight division. But, again, these are losses that you take and you kind of go back and you say, like, we can win fights like these just with a different game plan.
A different game plan and a little bit more rounds of cardio, really. I mean, if you think about it, right, maybe take 10-15% power off those punches in the first round so you can conserve some of that energy going into the second and third round and still have enough to at least move your head, right? Because I think he at least moves his head. But Blake, I want to get to this next fight because this one was actually a lot of fun too, right? Alex Caceres versus Sean Woodson. This was, when you imagine two lanky ass motherfuckers fighting, this was the exact outcome that what you would expect. So Alex Bruce Leroy Caceres versus Sean Woodson ended up going to Sean Woodson, but it was one of those fights that was just overall super unique with kind of the style was it. So did you think the fight went to the right winner? Thoughts on the fight versus and Sean Woodson versus Alex Bruce Leroy Caceres?
So this was a very interesting fight. Obviously, both these guys, Sean Woodson, obviously being the St. Louis hometown guy, he's got the arch tatted right on his abs. I like both of these guys. I love Bruce Leroy to the mostest. And Sean Woodson has been he's been a spectacle. He's been one of those guys, and I believe Michael Chandler said the same thing. Like, he's one of those guys that has all the ability and skill to possibly become a future champion. It's just, is he going to execute properly? Is his mind going to allow him to get as far as his skills will? But what I saw in this fight was two guys that faced challenges and two guys that were starting to overcome them. Bruce Leroy, he was the smaller fighter by far. I mean, I think by 4 inches. And his reach was by 6 inches or 5 inches. Like, it was, I mean, Sean Woodson has a huge reach. I mean, he's huge as shit for the featherweight division. But both guys were starting to find ways to get inside the other one. I mean, obviously, Bruce Leroy's tactic was, I need to get inside the length into striking range. I've got to break that barrier where he can't keep me at distance and punish me. You saw him do that really well when he started checking the calf kicks. He was checking the calf kicks really good for Sean Woodson, I believe, middle of the second round. So that even Sean Woodson's corner said, stop throwing calf kicks. He's checking every single one of them. You're not going to get that through anymore. And then Bruce Leroy did a couple of cool things. I keep calling him Bruce Leroy because I think that's the coolest nickname in all of mixed martial arts. But no, one of the things he did really well was he entered on a couple spinning attacks. Like, that just throws everybody off. Like, he found ways to really get into some scuffles. Not that they really clinched a whole lot, but they got into clinch range, and that's where Alex Caceres was able to do some damage. So I really enjoyed watching him try to overcome a taller fighter who was keeping him at length. Now, as far as the decision, I think the right decision was made. I did think that Alex Caceres made a lot of good contact on his strikes and really kept up with the pace of play, and both of them were changing their strategies throughout. Like, this was a tactical fight through and through. So I don't really have any qualms with the decision. So yeah, I just thought that fight was a really fun one to watch overall, and the hometown guy won, and I don't think that there was any hometown bias in giving him that decision, because I thought it was evenly matched throughout the fight. It was a toss up in my opinion.
Absolutely. Like you said, just it was so close, and both those guys put it together. Off topic, just for anybody, even this might lose us from viewers.
Yes.
I'd rather us be good people and let you guys know that Lomachenko versus Kambosos is probably going to be starting in about 10 minutes or so. They just finished the co-main event, so I just want to let everybody know that who is watching that boxing fight. So we probably will wrap it up before they get out there, because we only have a couple more fights left yet. But Blake, go ahead, my man.
Side note, I'm so sorry. My battery's running low, and my cord for some reason doesn't want to charge.
Final thoughts, buddy. Final thoughts on the card tonight before you lose you, because we'll probably just wrap it up. We only got one more fight before we do it. So final thoughts.
Final thoughts of the entire card. UFC Fight Night was fantastic. Obviously, Derek Lewis put on an absolute show for not the hometown, because he's from Houston, obviously, but he put on a show for all the fans that traveled to see him in that arena. So it was awesome. I thought the fight card up and down was fantastic. I do want to give a quick shout out. One fight that you and I were going back and forth on, Waldo Cortez Acosta versus Robelis Desponge. Acosta came and did what he was supposed to do. Desponge, as much as he is a devastating fighter on his feet, he really needs to work on his ground game. And I know he's got years to learn, but he is a bronze. He is a Taekwondo bronze Olympian winner. But he's got a lot of things to do on the ground. Chase Hooper, shout out to Chase Hooper. He was fantastic against Borisov tonight. He was amazing. That was the best I've ever seen Chase Hooper look. You had the Tabitha Ritchie fight and the Tisha Pennington fight. Tabitha Ritchie, Tisha Pennington looked great, got more off. But yeah, man, I thought the fight card was ecstatic top to.
Dang, just as he lost that man. But hey, he actually got it right in before we lost the boy. But Malachi, it looks like you were nodding on the Robelis de Spain growth pattern. What do you think the ceiling, if you got to see his fight, what do you think the ceiling is on him? Because like Blake was saying, he's has the skills as far as the striking, but the ground game, there was nothing there, like, at all. Like, that's almost as out of, sorry, I didn't mean to just kind of cut you off, but it was like almost as out of water as a fish that you would ever see in the modern UFC. Like, you don't see guys off their back just look so uncomfortable today.
So I hope I don't get crucified for this. Hope I don't get crucified. But this remind me of early Francis. Like when Francis that first Stipe fight, in the championship fight, where Stipe just took advantage of Francis not knowing how to work off his back, not knowing takedowns, not knowing really nothing. Like that what this fight reminded me. Like there's a clear hole in his game that Acosta took advantage of, just how Stipe took advantage of Francis in their first fight. And like I said with Francis way back when, like once Francis learned defense, he's gonna become the best heavyweight of all time. Before John Jones took up, but he's gonna become a scary heavyweight fighter. Same goes to again, I can't say his last name, but once he learns how to fight from his back, how to get good wrestling defense, learn a little bit more jiu-jitsu, he's gonna become a scary heavyweight too, and a problem for a division. He already got the power, obviously got the stand-up. Again, is very similar to Francis come up. I again don't crucify me for this, but I what I saw was very just like almost the same way how Francis would beat, and I think he's just gonna learn from this. And once he really pick up wrestling and jiu-jitsu, again, scary fighter we about to witness.
Absolutely. And I think what's really good, something that's he could use to his advantage is that length, right? Because like you saw Derek Lewis tonight, what he did so well when it came to his takedown defense and being able to stay up, digging those underhooks, right? And being able to get those underhooks because, just being able to do that, control the torso of your opponent, and not being able to get taken down. I think once Robellis, like you said, Malachi, is able to do that, he has all the makings, right? The physical tools are there. He has the length to do that. Brian, I know it seems like you want to kind of add on to this too. Thoughts on what do you think the ceiling potentially is on Robellis? Do you see him learning from this experience and really coming back, even just as soon as his next fight, coming back a much more improved ground fighter?
Yeah, I think it's similar to Rebecca, where again, this is a good lesson to have early in your career, is that you do need to work on that wrestling. That wrestling and that BJJ. Like guys at this level, they're not one. I mean, there are one-dimensional guys, but if you want to be a champion, you can't be. And I kind of feel like I don't know. Like I don't know what a training camp looks like, but you kind of imagine that some guys, like Rebellis, that just have that insane power and that insane length, kind of just think like, okay, well, I don't really need to work on that because I can keep it standing. I'm gonna knock him out in the first round, right? Like how many fights has he even had that have gone past the second round or gone to the third round, right?
I think this might have been the first.
Yeah,
exactly. So, maybe in camp he's thinking like, why do I need to work on that, right? And you can even see in the second and third round, he was exhausted, right? Breathing heavy, and obviously if a guy's going to wrestle you, the last thing that you want to be is tired, right? Really hard to get up, really hard to sprawl, really hard to defend. Luckily he didn't get finished, but again, I think it's a good lesson to take that like, hey, you already have the striking, like that's not really a concern. And I do agree with Malachi. It did kind of give me Francis flashbacks where you're like, okay, this is kind of that time early in his career where he learns like, this is something I need to work on. And then, the sky's the limit, honestly. I think that you fix that hole, you work on your cardio, you work on your wrestling defense. You don't need to go out there and submit guys. You just need to go out there and, stuff takedowns and be able to get up, right? And then, once you keep it on the feet, you're good. And this division is so crazy. These guys all have so much power that really, it's entirely possible for him to go on a win streak and get to that title just by knocking guys out. But again, this is something that has to be addressed going forward. But I think it will be. I think that it's just like Francis made that transition. I don't see why Rebellis can't either.
Yeah,
I think,
do. Go ahead, my bad.
My fault. I think 2 or 3 straight wins, he already looking at a title shot. And if not by that third fight, he's fighting for the title. Yeah, the heavyweight division, you can really move up fast in this division. The biggest thing being just outpacing guys. Like a lot of these heavyweights are clearly one-dimensional. They either do this or they do that. So if you can really solidify yourself, showing that you are very multidimensional with striking and with wrestling, which when it comes to wrestling, just get good with your wrestling defense. You don't even have to go in and take these guys down. As long as they can't take you down and you keep on your feet, you can end the fight. As we've seen in his past fight, he can end it within 30 seconds or something. So I do believe if he catch a hot win streak, which in heavyweights in the heavyweight world is really just 2 fights, two, 3 fights. He already looking at a title shot, especially with probably after this year, John Jones gonna give up the belt. If he don't, he should be retiring this year in November if he comes back. And so it'll be what, Aspinall probably at the top. So yeah, I think he could be fighting Aspinall by the summer of next year.
Wow. That's kind of a bold prediction, honestly. You know what I mean? But we could see it, like you said, heavyweights, it moves so fast. As far as like my thoughts on Waldo Acosta after the win, I think it's hard to really grade him heavily because he took down and won against such a one-dimensional fighter. Again, definitely give him the credit for what he did, right? But he was very understanding of the threat coming. He was literally baiting. He was like, "Hey, come swing at me. I'm gonna take you down. Just swing at me." And he did that, right? So it's hard to take away from someone that was knowing that singular path of victory, followed it to a T. Definitely all the credit, but I don't think he would shoot up as much in the rankings for knocking off someone like this versus his opponent if he were to get the win, continuing up that hype train. But derailing a hype train, being able to show this, I mean, like you said, Malachi, you can just string up all these wins together. There's no reason he can't start making a name for himself. Don McGuire asking about BIB buying BK, all of it, the bare knuckle stuff. I think that's a great move. I think with bare knuckle, the only issue, speaking because I've gotten to go to some of the bare knuckle MMA stuff with Game Bread. I know it's some of the bare knuckle fighters after going through that, they're different, right? They always are like, "Ooh, I might not want to do this for as much," right? So with the bare knuckle boxing and bare knuckle, just fighting overall, I think the key is being able to find names continuously, having the money coming in to continue to bring new names in as well as have some of those guys for longevity. But in bare knuckle, I think understanding just you're not going to have guys there for a long time. They're there for a good time, right? To put out a nasty show or two, and essentially that's it. But we're coming up on almost an hour here, 45 minutes or so. Let's wrap it up, guys. Brian, I'll let you give your thoughts first, and Malachi, I'll let you close out the show. Brian, final thoughts on tonight's show here live in St. Louis.
Yeah, this was a fun show. Unfortunately, I could only watch the main card, but that was fun. This was a good fight night. I want to say shout out to Woodson. Like, it felt like I was watching 10 different fighters in there. Just the switch up of styles from one sector to the next was fascinating to watch. He's going to be a problem in that featherweight division. I mean, like, that he's also 6'3". Like, that's crazy. I'm now a fan. Now I have a guy to keep an eye on and be like, okay, that's someone who might cause some problems with some dudes down the line. This was a fun night. Shout out to Derek Lewis. I'm so glad after that first round, he got that KO, because I was like, it's gonna be another fight where he gets, kind of pounded out, just kind of worked on the ground. But shout out to him. It's his night.
No, for sure. And then Malachi, final thoughts, my man.
Great event. We got text in the PR group chat. This was the highest grossing UFC fight night of all time for the United States. So it shows tonight, man. The crowd. I was only out there for one fight, the co-main. Not the co-main. Yeah, it wasn't co-main. The Joaquin fight. I was only out there for that fight, and like I said, it shows being out there. I wish I was out there the whole entire event. But yeah, this was a fun night, man. Great finishes. Shout out to again. So I'm gonna take a day and learn how to pronounce everybody's names. But the guy who knocked out McKinney, that's probably my favorite knockout and favorite performance of the night, and low key of the year, because the way McKinney fell, like, he really set him down. Like, it was incredible night of fights tonight, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, see, I try not to bring that one up just because he follows me on Instagram, so I was really rooting for McKinney to get that dub, so I was really rooting. Yeah, Don, showing some love, man. Don, appreciate you showing that love. Definitely drop the name of your show in the comments too. We'll give some love to your show, man. Appreciate you joining us in the comments. But yeah, definitely the night was great. Like you said, Malachi, the highest grossing United States fight night of all time. That's insane for the UFC, continuing to break records. They had a lot of great names on the card tonight. Hometown heroes, even Charles Energy Johnson bringing some energy at the beginning of the card. Like you said, Chase Hooper on the prelims. I just said overall the entire card was fun. I'm not sure, Malachi, if you were able to hear on the broadcast, but we had Baby Shark versus the Tiny Tornado. Brandon Fitzgerald put it beautifully as the Sharknado fight that we were able to see in the prelims. So it was a great fight from top to bottom. I think the prelims were great too. Main card topped off by Derek Lewis getting his 15th win tonight by knockout. Insane for him to keep doing that, mooning the crowd after. Derek Lewis, don't ever stop being yourself. So Brian, appreciate you joining my man Malachi live from St. Louis, was able to join us as well. But thank you all for joining us after this fight night. And we got a couple weeks before we got Dustin Poirier versus Islam Makhachev, and that's the one that will probably be next live for. So keep it locked in, guys. Live, Sean. We had Don in the comments. We had a couple of people out there as well. Doug in the comments. Oh, give a shout out real quick to Don McGuire's The Original Fighter's Voice with Don McGuire. Shout out the boy for being out here in the comments. Shout out to the show. Make sure you go check him out. But appreciate everybody joining us this late. Y'all have a great night, and we'll see y'all after the next fights.